Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter. And I have another juicy episode on my $1 Million Lab series. Today, I am joined by the gorgeous Rebecca Robertson, who is an independent financial advisor. And I had the very great pleasure of being on her podcast just a few weeks ago. So I'm so excited to get into all things money with Rebecca in this episode. Hey, it's Joanna Hunter here from the Into the LightWeb podcast, and we have another super juicy $1 Million Lab series for you. I am joined by the gorgeous Rebecca Robertson, and I'm going to let Rebecca introduce herself so that you can get to know her.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Robertson. What am I? Well, I'm a wealth strategist. That's what I call myself. And the reason why I do that is because I love helping people figuring out how they're going to scale and how they're going to grow their wealth. So I've got 21 years experience in financial services. I've worked for banks and all kinds of financial institutions for the last many years. And I've run my own business for the last 10 years. I'm a qualified financial advisor and principal director of my own IFA firm.
Amazing. So you are the lady to see once we start moving in the $1 Million plan. So inside our $1 Million experiment, we are asking the question, can mindset and intuition, along with $1 Million plan, make you a millionaire in just 1 year? So we think it can here at Joanna Hunter. So once they start growing their money, right, you are the lady to come and see when they've got like a little pot of money, they're ready to invest or they're ready to move up and things like that. So tell me a little bit about your own money journey. Was money always something that like super interested you, or how did you kind of get into what you do now?
Well, thank you for asking. So I think a lot of sort of coaches and probably much like yourself, sometimes you fall into these things and then you find yourself, oh, this is something I'm really good at. And actually, I should share other people how to do this because this is great. Mine was, I started working in a bank when I was 19, but that's a story in itself. So I left school when I was 15. I went to college. I did a MBQ in business and finance because I just literally didn't know what else I wanted to do. I couldn't even think of what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do. And I happened to get a job when I was 19 working in a bank as a temp. And the first day in the bank, I literally had only just had my own bank account for a number of weeks. My dad opened it for me. And the first day is quite a funny story. It was on a Saturday. There was a queue round the block. You know, when you used to go to the bank on a Saturday and there's a queue round the block.
Big queue.
Yeah, and I was 19 years old. I only just literally had my first bank account opened, which I didn't even understand what it was. And I was told that I was going to be on the cashier till on this. And I've never worked in a bank. I've never been in a bank. I've never done anything with banking. I'd worked in as a receptionist and that the job centre. I'd worked in those sorts of environments. And I didn't understand why I was even working on a Saturday. That was just bizarre to me. So I got ushered into the bank. We got told to go downstairs. We weren't given a uniform or anything like that. We were just in our own work clothes. And we were told there's like hundreds of leaflets on the table, and we were told to read the leaflets and that we'd be on the tills in about 20 minutes. And what had happened is that this particular branch had a lot of people on holiday and a lot of people off sick. So they had to get in a load of temp staff, and they had this, what was called a regional relief manager, come in and basically help and oversee the day. We were walked upstairs. We had 10 minutes on the PCs, 10 minutes in front of the tills. I opened the drawer and they were wads and wads and wads of notes. I'd never seen so much money in all my life. And it was just completely blew my mind. I felt like I was on this regal high throne chair in this large desk in front of me, like I was very high up, and people were coming in. There was this queue of people just streaming in. And I was having to stand there like, can I have this money, please? Can I take this out, please? And I've never even seen this computer system before. And that was my start of my career in banking. And within 3 months, I was taken on as a full-time member of staff, which they'd never really had happen before. But being a temp going on to being employed is quite unusual in banks back then. I was a head cashier within 6 months, and I progressed my career very, very quickly. And by the time I was 28, I was a regional sales manager for a large brokerage and financial company. And unfortunately, I was made redundant in 2008 when I was pregnant with my first child. So my career has very, very much been up till then very corporate. And then I started my own business just coming up, well, just 10 years ago today. Well, not this month.
Okay, amazing. Wow, what a journey. So tell me, one of the big things that I really love about your brand and what you do is about empowerment around money. People, because money is one of these, we had a little chat just before this, and we were talking about like money is something that people don't really like to talk about. They're kind of a little bit ashamed, embarrassed. It's like it's and if you're in Britain, it's so not the done thing. So, there's a lot of things, and I think for me personally, I think that money is one of the greatest spiritual teachers of our time. And so for me, it's like, I love talking about money because I think there's nothing like money to bring up our stuff.
No, totally. The triggers will become obvious. And I did a talk this
Yes.
morning where I said to them, look, if there's something I'm saying that you're thinking I don't like this woman, I'm not taking it personally. It's because you're triggered by whatever I'm saying, not who I am as a person. And that's fine. I can take it. I'm a big girl. And I don't, it's not my problem. It's theirs. And I mean that with love. And the problem we've got as a society is that we are in a generation of where my daughter's turning 13. Her impression of money is not the same as what we had when we were growing up. And what I had growing up was I was brought up by my grandparents who had very little money. We lived in a council house, and then my mum was married to a gentleman with more money. He worked for the government and worked for the council. And so she shopped in John Lewis. She shopped in, Waitrose and Marks and Spencer's. And I was basically brought up on hand-me-downs from my older brother because I was a tomboy. And I've got my own money story and stuff going on. But as a society, we're almost taught that talking about money and wanting to be wealthy is maybe a little bit crass, or it might be that then you're not a well-rounded, nice person. And I think we need to let go of a lot of those past sort of expectations on ourselves, environments that we've been brought up in that's given us a certain mindset around money. And we have to see it for what it is. And there's two strain of thoughts with this. The first one is that our emotion towards money should be literally nothing. We should have no emotional connection to money. So I'm holding my pen right now. I should feel as passionate about money as I do this pen. Like, we should have no emotional connection to it. And I agree with that to the extent of cutting emotional ties from what I've described, those past expectations, our mindset and the subconscious level. But I don't necessarily agree with it when it comes to how we energetically deal with it, because then what we're doing is if we're saying we've got no emotion to it, we're not really seeing the value and the empowerment, the positivity piece around it. And I see money as an empowering tool, and particularly for women, I see it, it enables you to retire early, to look after your grandchildren when you want to, if you have them, to sail around the world, to buy a second property abroad and spend half your time there, to leave your partner if you want to, because you're not financially necessity of having to be with somebody. Unfortunately, you hear that a lot. To enable you to be in a situation that if you was to become a widow, that you're not then left sort of not sure what's going on or how it's all going to work. So I think it's really crucial that that empowerment piece is done in a really positive way, so that we're letting go of the emotional ties, but making sure we're connecting and aligned with our money emotionally and in terms of the practical things that we can be doing.
Yeah, so really, I mean, you covered a lot there, and it shows really the depth of the subject of money. I mean, there's so much tied into it. And so this is one of the reasons why I can literally discuss money till the cows come home, because there is so many layers. It's such a juicy onion, and it's so many multi-layers. But, and I really agree with I think the negative emotional connection, we absolutely, like all the stories that we have, like it's crass, we're a bad person for wanting it. I think there's so much shame around money for many people, and that's actually what's preventing them from making more money. Because the shame is literally, if you're, imagine you're driving the money car and you've got one foot on the gas, really gunning it, right? So you're going and you're making money and it's great, but then the other foot ends up on the brake because you feel shame, because you feel like, oh, but people are going to, if I talk about money, people are going to think I'm crass. Or if I like if I mention how much I've made and not actually celebrate that, like a celebration, if we get promotion at work, we sell, like if you got a regular job and you get a promotion, you put it on your Facebook and celebrate, and everyone's like, woohoo. As an entrepreneur, your promotion is every time you hit a new income level. And yet there's so many entrepreneurs that really, really struggle, and I myself included, to say, listen, I've hit this new income goal and this next income goal, and I've had to really push myself out of the comfort zone. And I really agree with, we've got to detangle the negative connotations and connect with money in a more positive way, because you're right. For me, what money equals is freedom of choice. When you have more choices in this world, and aka money opens so many doors to that, you basically can do more things, and you can help more people, and you can be the person that you really, really want to be. When your resources in this world are limited, you have less choice. So you're going to have a limited ability to be the person that you want to be. And that's a big thing for me, because we talk a lot in the $1,000,000 experiment about being a conscious millionaire, a millionaire that is awake in the world, that is making good choices with their money and voting with their money. Because that was another thing that growing up, my mom was like a little bit of an activist growing up, and she was all for like voting with her money. So her activism was very much household activism. So like we were not allowed to buy things from South Africa because they, especially from companies that supported an apartheid. We, weren't allowed to, there were certain brands that were like, no, they support bad business practices. So this is like, my mum was definitely like a household activist. And I think this is, the more women that are empowered around money, the more activism we can actually even do with our money, even if it is just choosing not to buy a brand that is supporting bad or unethical ways to work in this world. And of course, with more money, you get a choice. So you can buy more ethical products that sometimes tend to be a little bit more, but you can vote with your money that way too, which is really cool.
Yeah,
So
and that's an
tell
interesting
us.
point. So because you could actually invest ethically as well,
Exactly.
and so you can take the money that you are making to invest, and actually you can do that in a way of, okay, I'm going to get returns, and I hope it should be sort of well invested. But you can even go to the next point of going, no, I only want to invest in businesses that are impactful and are having an impact in the world.
Yes,
So that
I
with
love
more
that.
money you have more choice, and by putting on your oxygen mask to yourself, looking after yourself more first and creating that wealth first, then you've actually got more opportunity to have a legacy and give back and create so much more freedom for yourself. Whereas what I see happening quite a lot is that women are doing things for free, they're sort of helping their community, which is all lovely things to do, but I then see them 10-20 years later and they're in a situation where they're not in a financial position that they can make their own decisions. Whereas if we just flip it the other way round and go, look, earn the money that you need to earn, whether that's 10 grand a year or 10 grand a month, whatever it is that you need, and there's no judgment, right? And as to which figure that is. And that's the other thing, there's a huge amount of judgment around money. Once we get rid of those thoughts and processes, and we stop judging each other and judging ourselves, we just focus on what the ultimate goal is, achieve that, then we can start to have more excess and be able to give back more, invest more, and multiply more. And I truly believe that then we will have a more rounded society, and actually the wealth gap that we're seeing at the moment, where the rich are getting richer and the poorer are getting poorer, by women being empowered with their finances, I honestly believe that is the answer to reduce that wealth gap and actually allow society as a whole to live more equally.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I fully agree, because I also think that women are way more likely to invest in philanthropic things that really help boost low income families as well. And it's about, I mean, I was a child of like the 90s and stuff like that. So I was deeply moved by like give the man a fish eats for a day, teach a man to fish eats for life, and Band-Aid and trade not aid, and like all these concepts. And I grew up on these concepts and I loved them, because I really do think that people don't really want to live out on handouts, but and they want to be given a way that they can empower themselves. So I definitely feel like women in being empowered with money is huge, and especially if that comes with a level of consciousness as well, where they're really thinking about on from a conscious level of what it is that they're doing with their money and stuff like that. So I love that you talk about this. So one of the big things that you do as well is you demystify um the whole kind of realms of like investing. And once you, because we've got this 20-step plan, so we're taking this £1, we're doubling it again and again and again, we do it 20 times and we reach 1 million with it. So once my peeps start getting into these bigger levels, one of the things that a lot of them are, some of them are moving along this plan really amazingly, considering at this time that we're recording this, we're only like 3 months into the experiment. But as we start to get to these bigger amounts, obviously the mind games kick in a little bit more. Like we start getting psyched out. Oh my God, can I do this? Like, wow. But that's where things like getting your money to work for you kicks in. And this is something that you sort of specialize in, isn't it? In like the investing side and stuff.
Yeah, so investing can mean lots of different things in different ways, and we have to be quite careful that we don't get sort of caught up in something that's like a real shiny object. And it does depend on someone's attitude to risk is primarily the first thing, and also what their capacity is to lose the money. So when I'm as an independent financial advisor, when I give financial advice, these are some of the things we start to consider. So if somebody had £50,000 and they had a mortgage, okay, that's fine, they've got a plan to pay that off, and they have no other savings, no other debts, then it's a case of looking at that 50,000 and going, okay, what should we do with it? What risk should we take with that money, as to how diverse their investment portfolio is, and there's different asset classes within those. Now, but what we see, unfortunately, online is you don't hear this language. You have to go and seek this language out and get educated on this language, or ask somebody for help. What we see online is like what I had this morning is someone Facebook messaging me about Bitcoin, or you see a YouTube advert about Bitcoin, or we see something about cryptocurrency in general, or this latest thing that can make you lots of money. And we have to be very careful, make sure we're putting ourselves in the best educated position, so that we know that we're making an informed choice and not rushing into something that might be a little bit off. And the way that I judge that, I have people message me going, oh, what do you think about this investment firm? And I can't advise them, as to, I have to go through a regulated process. But if I don't recognise the name and they're not regulated in the UK, if they're not regulated by the FCA, then I'd say, look, they're not regulated. So there's lots of things that they're not going to jump through. They're not going to insure, and your money's not backed up by anything. So I wouldn't suggest you touch them with a barge pole. That's like from a regulated hat. And what we want to do is, what I try and encourage people to do when it comes to things that seem a little bit more shiny object is, well, do the foundational kind of stuff first, do the basics first, and then once you know what track you're on, then start looking at some of the other stuff, and consider, it's a bit like gambling, because anything that's that much risky and we don't know what the return's going to be, because we don't know what the landscape is going to look like, then you only gamble with that money that you can afford to lose. But when we're doing,
I love that piece of advice. I just want to recap on that. It's like, what is your aversion to risk? Like how, if you're ready, like chips on the table, I'm going to go all in, but you can afford to lose that. You can take some of the riskier options. The cool thing with some of the riskier options is that they could be a big reward, but equally it's a bigger risk and you can lose it all, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand of that, if you are very risk adverse and you're like, I really want something that works here, you got to take a lower risk thing, and that's maybe where you're not looking at maybe some of the newer things like crypto. Because I have friends who have made great money with crypto, but I also have friends that have lost money with that kind of idea as well, right? So it swings and roundabouts. But then I've got people who, but then there's other things that are like an ISA, for instance. It's not really like you're not going to be sweating bullets having one of them,
No, not a cash ISA, you wouldn't, but unfortunately you don't get the return. So they're the minimal risk, because they're usually in a UK bank, and your money's relatively protected in many respects. And a cash ISA, you'll be lucky if you get only more than 1% interest.
Exactly. So it's like low yield, but the risk isn't massive. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So when we're looking at this, what I encourage people to do, so this happens, I've got some, multi six-figure business owners who don't have necessarily built their wealth over the years whilst they were working. They've sort of all very quickly earn a lot of money, so we're having to do all the foundational stuff, and then we can, once we've built up that pyramid, then we can start to look at other things, and then we start to get more creative. So from I have a Maslow's theory pyramid that I work on.
Okay, like the hierarchy of needs pyramid.
Yeah, so the first level is like basically putting food on the table, and the second level is around increasing your income. And then the next level is around protecting what you currently have. So looking at insurances, for example. So if you was to pass away, then if you're the main breadwinner and you passed away and your family are left with a mortgage, could they continue? Probably not. So you look at different levels of protection. Now you might have assets that could be sold, but would you rather not pass that legacy on for possibly a small, affordable monthly amount for that premium? So that's a brief example. But that's different for everybody. And my other point that came up when you were just talking is that you have one friend that one's done it, one friend that's another person's done it. It's almost like going to speak to your mate down the pub and getting advice from your mate down the pub who, oh yeah, you want to go and talk to Dave, you've done a great deal. Just because someone else has done it doesn't mean it's going to be right for you.
Exactly.
Everyone's circumstances are different. So just because, and the subject of crypto is a massive subject, and the underlying risk is, someone on Facebook today was talking about it potentially being, backing up for loans and for property in the future. We are way off that, and mainly because of money laundering. And so the governments and as a society, they won't be approving those things until it is so legitimately covered that they know where the money is coming from for criminal purposes. So we want to build that foundation up and make sure that we're getting the education in a all-rounded way, not just from particularly one person that's sort of shouting, you should come and do this, because is there, what's their intention behind that? Are they really got your best intentions for you and what your financial future might look like? And we see that with multi-level marketing. We see that in lots of different ways in business. So we have to be cautious and we have to ask the right questions. And then, so moving on from protection, they then go into actually, before you start investing, actually, it's pensions. Now, pensions can be investing. Pensions depends on which language and terminology you have. But pensions are in the essence of a income that you want for when you retire. Pensions have lots of different frameworks and different models these days, depending on what people are wanting to achieve. But then we have savings, which is like longer term savings, maybe for a new car. So yes, that comes after pensions. And because it's meant to be a longer term horizon thing, so you're planning for it over a longer period of time. And then actually at the top, then it's investing. So what people often do is they flip it and they go, well, before I start looking at protection, and before I do my pension, and I'll just start investing, because they want to take a small piece of what they've got. Like your guys that are girls that are multiplying, they're like, I want to take this piece and I want to invest it. And the investing is not the issue. The issue is that what have you done some of the other foundational pieces which actually would be a better place to start. So an example of that is a business owner. They've got surplus money in their business. How do they start investing? Well, that is a massive subject, because we use the language and hear the language quite a lot about reinvesting back in your business. And that's an interesting piece, and you can't work out the profit margin on personal development in terms of returns of investment, because if you didn't do that piece of personal development, would your business then flourish? We don't really know if that's true or not. But when we're investing in things like maybe like a new website as an example, will that new website or that new branding really build more revenue? And so we have to look at the figures and look at the returns for that.
I want to stop there for a second and just talk about that, because this is a big thing, because I have a real bee in my bonnet about website and branding and things like that, because I think a lot of people invest a lot of money in these things and they're not asking the right question that you said there. Is it going to bring me a rate of return? Yeah. And that is so important, you know, because I've seen so many business owners and they're in what I call the rookie stage. They're just learning, they're just getting the ropes. They go out there, they splurge $5,000 on a website. It is all singing, it is all dancing. This thing is beautiful. Angels sing when you you open it up the page. 2 months later, they have changed inside themselves and they have pivoted. And they're now got this website that's gorgeous, but it's no longer aligned with who they are. Yes. And that website was not a great investment in the beginning of a business. They would have been better off with maybe a single page that they went and made on Wix websites or something like that. That was a template until they had grown and evolved enough to actually be like, now a $5,000 website is going to actually give me, a 50, 100,000, even a 7-figure return on what I'm doing. And the same with the fancy branding as well. Yeah. Because, in the early days, maybe you just pick some brand colors, you stick to them, you have a nice little look going on, you have a little font you use, you're giving it a coherent look, which is important. Yeah. But maybe we'll leave the big investment to the all singing, all dancing branding person.
You don't necessarily know what you're servicing and who you're talking to.
Exactly.
And I see exactly the same thing happening all the time, where people are willing to invest in that way, because it's like I'm not saying it's all shiny objects. So there does come a point where you do need to do a degree of that, but too early on, too soon, it's not necessary. But there's a lot of shiny object stuff going on in business where they think they're reinvesting back in their business and they're not really. What they're doing is it's just a spending habit. And I was on a talk this morning and there's an accountant called Joanna Bell, and she described this really well, that basically you're encouraged to spend £100 by your accountant because it means that you're saving tax. Well, that £100, you're saving £19%, which is £19 in tax. So you've spent £100 to save £19 in tax. And I love that. That's a really good way of putting it, because what we do is like a crack habit to our business where we like to spend and spend and spend and spend and spend. And that includes investing back in our business. And that's how we, it's tax efficient and I'll pay less tax if I spend and spend and spend, because I'm reinvesting back in my business. And actually all you're doing is spending. There's no actual measurable understanding if you're really investing back in your business. And that way of describing things is how I feel about people going to do cryptocurrency and they haven't got any of their own personal finances in order or any of their business finances in order. They jump into not even step 7, they're like 100 down the road. They've got no backup emergencies.
Isn't it? It's about like money literacy.
Yeah.
And it's like somebody who's not literate saying, I'm going to buy a library. And you're like, but you can't read any of the books in it.
Right. Yeah, and I'm not saying that, you don't have any financial education, but and people that go and buy crypto are financially illiterate. I totally don't mean that in any disrespect. I don't mean it's come across like that.
But some people are like that because they don't have the financial understanding that comes before. Yeah. So it's because their mate said it's a good idea and they did it and they made some money and now they want to encourage others.
Yeah, exactly. So if that person ends up with 50 grand and they've had a good experience with crypto, the first thing they're probably going to go, oh, I'll go and put it all in crypto. And it's like, no, your risk profile would dictate how you invest that money. And actually you want a diverse portfolio. So I've got a client who likes buying all kinds of really, like she was out at a meal one night and they were doing wine tasting and there was a new bottle of wine there. So she's WhatsApping me going, can I buy this bottle of this wine company? Like, No, it's too much money. The return of investment's not there. And as a proportion of your overall portfolio, it's too much of as a percentage of your portfolio as it stands right now. I can get you just as good returns in a safer, more secure and more diverse environment. So a diverse portfolio looks like where you would have gold, you would have different commodities within that. You would have property, you would have what's called gilts or bonds. So they are sort of like the safer stuff, the less riskier stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start to go up the scale with equities, which are like stock market. So you have the UK stock market, you have the US, which is basically mostly global. So they're US based. And then you have Europe, and then you have Asia, and you have emerging markets. And the more you have in emerging markets and certain industries that are deemed as sort of more up and coming, if you like, then the more risk you have. With more risk is more potential, but they're more volatility. So with more volatility, for example, in the pandemic, I had clients with larger losses because they had a larger risk, but they bounced back quicker because they were investing in a way that meant actually the returns were there that much quicker. So the curve was big down, but the curve was big going back up again. But then I had other clients that were investing in a certain way where actually their losses were quite minor because of the way that the investment strategy was worked, but they still had the advantage of the upward curve that we happened towards the end of last year. So it does depend on the strategy of the investment. It depends on the diversity of the portfolio, how that's managed, and primarily that's all based around the risk strategy and the risk profile of the client. And in terms of the hierarchy, where people start is they need to make sure they've got emergency funds in place for themselves and their business, that they've got insurances in place, that they've done things like their wills and they've done life insurance and such like. And then you can start to look at pensions, savings, and then investments. And investments can be ISAs, so stocks and shares ISAs.
Mm-hmm.
They could be an offshore bond or an onshore bond that is a tax wrapper, but it basically means that it's all about, this is when it starts to become about more tax. So with more money comes more problems because there's more tax. And what the goal is for you to have an investment pot that is paying you income from its returns, which is basically super tax efficient.
Right. Okay.
So it means that then if rather than you paying dividend tax or paying income tax or whatever else, that pot of money is giving you income and you've not had to pay income tax on it. And even with a pension, you still have to pay income tax on the money that's earned. So as you grow your wealth, you want to basically put the money into different pots to allow you to receive the money back in a way that is more tax efficient long term.
Oh, that's really good advice. I feel, Rebecca, like I've had the most grown-up adult conversation about money I've ever had. There's been more big money words in this conversation than any other money conversation that I've had. And I've been self-employed for 22 years. So tell people, if they have been really inspired by this podcast, tell people how they can find you and tell them how they can, because you do a lot of really cool things. You have like a membership and there's a planner coming out, I believe, as well, which is like loads of really cool stuff. So tell people how they can find you.
The best place to go is rebeccarobertson.co.uk. It will direct you to my regulated website if that's what you need, with a one-to-one financial advisor. But there's a membership on there. I've got my planner link on there, which is available on Amazon. So that you've got my free group, and I've also got a free planner group as well. So you can come and check me out there. I've got a podcast which you kindly came on and we had an amazing conversation, so much so amazing I had to do it in 2 parts. And that's called Accelerate Your Wealth. So I'm all about people that are at the beginning of the story, like beginning of their journey in that make phase where they're just sort of making things. I'm not a business coach, but I've been in business 10 years, and I try and sort of share people's stories and empower people and inspire people. And then in my memberships, you start me more moving into like how you manage it and then how you multiply it. And I also have a program for business owners, which is like a 6-month mini mastermind program, which is, I love it all. I love doing it all because the impact and what it does for people Yeah, I really love the
Financial
end result.
empowerment is amazing because it is legit a force on this planet that can completely transform a human being and give them so much more choice and take them out of what I feel can often be like victim energy. When we don't have choice as a human, we feel so victimized, I think. And when we have more money, we have more choices open to us. So,
100%,
you know,
definitely.
and it doesn't take the crappy things away. We had the lovely Helen
Mm.
Pitchard on, and she was talking about how her having more money, becoming a 7-figure business earner. She said, you know, it doesn't stop the crappy things from happening, but what it does is it makes it easier when they do because you have more choice.
Definitely. And when you're in that victim mode, you're just then putting the blame and the responsibility onto everybody else. Whereas like Helen's a really good example where she, you know, pulled up her socks and she just, you know, she worked really hard to achieve what she's
Really
achieved.
hard.
And you know, sometimes I think maybe a bit too hard, like, you know, but she's amazing at what she does.
She's
And
amazing.
she's got a really kind heart with it, amazingly kind person. And what it's doing is it's not only enabling her to be in this amazing position where she has more choice, she gives so much to people, like she does so much for people. She just sent someone something because they mentioned it in a conversation. She's incredibly kind, but she's empowered to do that, and the legacy that's then giving her children, and she's now buying businesses that her children could run the businesses. You know, it's such an opportunity that once we get over ourselves and we realize that we have so much more to give, it's pretty incredible.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us today on
Loved
the
it.
Into the LightWeb podcast.